Welcome to this lecture. Let's start off with how to be engaging in your interview. Firstly, first impressions count. So what makes for first impressions? This is you knocking on the door, seeing the interviewer for the first time, walking in, saying hello, shaking hands, taking off your coat, sitting down, accepting or declining water, tea. Now, in that first impressions, you can either do that timidly or you could do that with confidence. Guess what you're going to be doing with confidence? Making an entrance also includes handshakes. So when you are shaking people's hands, shake their hands firmly. No vice grips and also no slippery hands. You're basically shaking the hands, 1, 2, 3, and done. If shaking hands is not in your custom or you're not feeling comfortable with it, distance and greet people. And this sort of signals to people that you're not comfortable with shaking people's hands. And that's okay. Get set as soon as you can. I would encourage you not to take it for granted as to where you're going to be seated. Get into the room and sort of wait to be acknowledged. And ask the interviewer, where would you like me to be seated? So don't just take it for granted that you're going to take any chair and just sit down. Be invited to be seated. If you've got a jacket or a coat, now just to illustrate the difference, I'm wearing a jacket. A coat is something a little bit bigger, say for looking after yourself in the rain or in inclement weather. If you've got one of those on, I would suggest that you take those off because it does look a bit weird having to sit there and you've got these big coats on. Take that off, put that on the side and be seated. In an interview, I'd also suggest that you have something with you for your notes. This could be anything from a notepad that you physically write down notes in, or it could be something electronic, whether it's your electronic device like an iPad or your mobile device. On that, whatever it is, have your pre-prepared questions that you ask the interviewer. When you are seated, it is expected that the interviewer is going to ask you, would you like something to eat or drink? Now remember, you are there for the interview. I would suggest that you decline anything like coffee or tea. You're not going to get a chance to drink that. It's just going to remain cold on your desk because you're going to be talking more often. And I'd also discourage you from eating anything like biscuits because of the crumbs that's going to be on your face. And it's just going to be awkward for you to eat and talk when you are going to be doing most of the talking. If you need to, I would encourage you to at least have a glass of water, because then it shows your hospitality in terms of embracing what the interviewer has offered you. Your interviewer could also ask you what is known as breaking the ice questions. They could ask you, did you get here okay? Did you find the place all right? Now, even if you took 2 hours to find the place because you just got lost, don't say that to the interviewer, because then it signals to them that perhaps getting to work might be a bit difficult. And it might just be one of those odd occasions that happen on the day. So even if you took 2 hours to get there, just say, thank you. I found the place perfectly fine. And then they might also ask you, are you okay for time? Be careful with these questions. Avoid saying something like, yes, I have to get back to my other employment just now. I just told them I'll step out for a moment. Because then that signals a bit of integrity issues on your part, that you're not being entirely open about where you're going to be with your current employer, and that's going to be a concern for them. In terms of body language, I would encourage you just to be aware of your body language in the interview. You are seen from the head up, but body down, you need to also be aware of your posture. Sit at the edge of the seat and not towards the back. When you are seated at the edge, your lungs are more stretched and your voice has better projection than when you are seated all comfortably in a seat. Especially avoid those seats that are like armchairs, it's lounges basically, because your interview could be a bit more casual. Sit at the edge of the seat and have your body posture where both your legs are firmly on the ground, to avoid crossing your legs so you have that shifty look. Don't fidget with any pens or paper. Keep your eye focused on the interviewer. You can also do what is known as a mirror and matching principle. So if the interviewer moves forward, you move forward. If they move slightly back in their chair, you move back. Because then that shows a little bit of rapport with the person that is asking you questions. Mirror and matching principle becomes a little bit difficult in panel interviews because there's more than one person, so who are you going to mirror? So in that instance, I would just suggest that you sit at the edge of the chair and maintain the eye contact with whoever is asking you the question. When you are preparing your questions, there are some safe questions to ask and there are some questions just to avoid. Here they are. Avoid questions about possible takeovers or the risk of redundancy or the potential closure of the company. Maybe you heard something in the news. Because when you ask these questions, it shows perhaps a hesitancy to join the company, and that's not what the interviewer is looking for. Safe questions to ask are the following: the organization's recent news, plans for expansion, your potential to grow within this position. What are the steps following the interview? Is this a new position or are you filling the role for a previous person? These are safe questions, and the more you can have these type of questions, it shows to the interviewer that you are interested in that position. Never say to the interviewer that you have no questions. Never ask whether or not you have been successful in the interview. And never ask the interviewer, so what did you think of my interview? So again, these are questions that it might be very innocently asked, but it doesn't convey a professional image of you just after the interview process. So walking out the room is your most trickiest because you're at your vulnerable. And someone in that interview room is going to have to walk you out to the reception area or just outside the building. So what do you speak about, if anything? You stay composed, stay professional. They might ask you, if you travel there, are you okay traveling back? What do you have plans for the rest of the day? Keep those answers neutral as possible. And when you are done, look at the person, thank them for their time, and so you leave the interview room. I hope that has helped you just to give you some sort of guidance in terms of what to do in the interview room. What I'm going to do next is to share with you my advice to you if once you are successful in that interview process, they then call you back and say, you are now going to be selected for psychometric testing. Let's talk about that now. What is psychometric testing? Psychometric testing is an independent assessment of you as an individual. It's conducted by a psychologist that the company engages. It is a separate interview. This is important for you to note. It's a process independent of the employer process interview, and you get assessed on one of two levels. Number one, your aptitude, which is your technical skills, and number two, your behavioral skills. Now, depending on the type of position that you're applying for, they could send you for a whole host of different battery of tests. Before you go for that psychometric testing, I would encourage you to ask either the recruitment agent or the employer the specific battery of tests that you're going to be exposed to. These tests could include the following: testing your ability, intelligence, performance, problem solving, skill, specific skills related to the job, or verbal and numeric reasoning. Those are examples of aptitude tests. Personality tests could include tests on your values, your interests, your motivation, your drives. So depending on the type of tests, you could then go online and find similar types of tests. It wouldn't be exactly the same as what you're going to be tested ultimately, but I believe the more exposure you have to other types of tests, the more your confidence grows and the more you just alleviate your fear about the psychometric process. When you are going for your test, I would suggest that you arrive early, you're still being assessed, dress up for an interview as if you're being interviewed by the employer, eat well beforehand. Usually they give you some options in terms of timing. I would suggest pick the time slot as early as possible in the day. Because it's so intense as a process in terms of the questions that they're going to be asking you, the more early in the day, the more awake and alert you'll be. In the actual assessment, take your time in responding to these questions. If you're not feeling well, just say to the person, I just need a break, and they will give you that break. Take along your own snacks if needed, like energy bars and your own beverages, just to keep yourself hydrated. It is a very intense process. After the psychometric testing is complete, it usually takes between 3 to 5 days, maximum a week. You are entitled to receive feedback on the outcome, very high level, on the psychometric results. The actual report you will not have access to because that's the company paying for that detailed report. But you are entitled to go back to that psychologist and get a high-level overview of how your results came out. So if you are going for one, remember that you can request for that separate meeting after your psychometric testing. The whole outcome of the psychometric testing is to match. The interviewer liked you, they had an interview process, and you have a separate independent assessment by a psychologist who basically looks at other behavioral standards from an independent point of view. And these two combined give the interviewer and the employer, your potential employer, a more rounded approach to understanding you before they make their final decision. I'm hoping that this lecture has not only helped you in understanding how to be engaging in your interview process, but has also helped you just to alleviate the fear around psychometric testing. Remember that once you have been selected for psychometric testing, it's a good thing, because not everyone in an interview process goes for psychometric testing. It's almost like you must imagine you started off with this big pile of CVs and you were part of that CVs. And from there, the employer now whittled it down to an interview process live, seeing you in person. From there, they select a final few to go for psychometric testing. And based on their recruitment process, either there's one more interview process, it could sometimes involve you coming one more time back to the employer's premises to conduct like a live presentation or one more sense check. Or they could just hire you straight from there once they are happy. But the fact that you have gone for psychometric testing is a good thing for you. So don't be daunted by it, be encouraged by it, and use the guidelines of what I'm sharing with you just to be at your confident best. That completes this lecture. What I've covered so far is the CV process when you are needing a CV. What I'm going to do right now in the next lecture is to share with you how to put your LinkedIn profile together. That's going to be your online CV that's relevant whether or not you are applying for a position. And that's in the next lecture. I'll see you then. I'll see you then. I'll see you then.